Welcome to Impact, where immigrants and Americans discuss America today. I'm your host, Pamela Anchang. Today on Impact, a very important and complex topic, mental health and stigma in immigrant communities. To discuss this very important topic are some brilliant guests. Mr. Raymond Korago, a UK-educated Kenyan actor, writer, and producer in Hollywood who's battled this condition. Dr. Mai-Phuong Nguyen, a first-generation Vietnamese-American physician, minority healthcare and refugee rights advocate, and a remarkable filmmaker who has also battled this issue. This is a show you can't afford to miss, a show that can save someone's life. So please don't go away. Stay tuned with us on Impact. I'm Pamela Anchang. It's a pleasure to have you on the show because it's a very important topic, as we've said. All of you understand what it is to battle mental health. I don't even sometimes know how to call it. Let me start with you, Dr. Mai. How do you put it under one category? Tell us a little bit about yourself. And
I think the message I want to send to our listeners is that there's so much stigma to mental health. We don't even have the vocabulary for it.
Exactly.
I am ethnically Vietnamese. I'm a refugee after the fall of Saigon in 1975. In my Vietnamese culture, and I can say predominantly for the Asian culture, there isn't a word for mental health. And in English, it's mental health diseases. Is it a real physical disease? I would beg to differ. So I use the terminology mental health challenges.
I like that.
Because it's not pejorative or it's not labeling, but it is definitely a challenge, sometimes more than others. So I use the word mental health challenge. I think the proper words are mental health conditions. So we try to tiptoe around it.
But... And that's so interesting you say that, Raymond. How do you feel when somebody says you have mental health? What? How do you talk about it when you talk about your condition or your experience?
I mean, to build on what the doctor said, mental health, it makes it sound very physical. But I believe it's more of a spiritual. I mean, there is a physical aspect to it, but I believe it's more. It's deeper than that. It's something spiritual. It's something that can't be. You can't put your finger on it.
Yeah.
In the same way, if you have
there isn't a blood test for it. There isn't a DNA marker. There isn't anything. It's multifactorial. And
Absolutely.
I think where Western medicine fails, as in my case, it failed for 25 years, is it oversimplifies it. A plus B equals C.
And it's not that easy.
Those of us who are first-generation immigrants, we know that it's so multifactorial. It's biosocial, psychological, emotional, spiritual, all of that.
This is a very difficult subject matter for me because, like we said, today's issue is really the stigma surrounding it to the point that I'm having a hard time articulating what it is. So, Dr. Mai, do you want to tell us a little enlightenment about your journey a little bit?
I think the most important thing is I left my native homeland at 6 years old with something called the U.S. evacuation out of the fall of Saigon. So I was amongst 150,000 very lucky people, and I came to understand that as an older adult. And I didn't feel traumatized going through it. It was just something we went through. You know, boom, the tanks rolled in from North Vietnam. My parents had to find a way out of Vietnam. I have very clear memories at 6 years old of that day, like crystal clear, like watching Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, Technicolor clear of that evacuation. And then we were on a ship. We had to go to Guam. We lived in a refugee camp. Those memories are blurry, but the day we left is crystal clear. And then we ended up in a refugee camp in a place called Indian Town Gap, Pennsylvania. And then we were sponsored out, and I was integrated into American society from Pennsylvania to Washington, D.C. to Virginia. And then as an adult at 18, we moved to California, and I discovered Little Saigon, Little Vietnam in Orange County. And that was the beginning of my awakening. And I felt very much empowered by that. My trauma as an adult began during the 1992 LA riots, which occurred April 29th.
You were in medical school at the time.
Yes, I was second year here in downtown LA, and it happened 17 years to the day because I left my country April 29th. 1975. And you all can read about it in my bestseller that's coming out before the 50th anniversary in 2025. That's my ultimate dream goal. But my point being is all of that was very traumatizing, and I had no clue. And I was a medical student. And so my depression began in second year medical school when I started having serious problems dealing with taking care of black and brown bodies coming in at 16, 13 years old and literally dying in my arms, in my hands.
Wow.
And I'll say that story. But young men's hearts, I mean, I, as the third-year medical student in the OR, had to pump little boys' hearts that coded, meaning it flatlined and died because they're exsanguinating from gunshot wounds, from drive-by shootings, from gang violence. To this day, it's bothersome to me, but I've had 25 years to work through it. And what I wanted to share was I was very traumatized. I started getting depressed. I started questioning my desire to be a physician. And there wasn't anything I wanted to be more than to be a doctor.
Yes.
Because as a woman of color, as an ethnic minority, first generation, and I'm not playing the victim, it was a very long and unlikely road that I would succeed and become a licensed physician.
Yes.
And so when I started having trouble getting through my rotations, and you have to understand, East LA and USC is not just any medical school. It is one of the hardest programs in the country just because we live in the concrete jungle of the poverty, the beauty, and the wonderful parts of LA. But it is a hard, tough community. And so when I started seeing psychiatrists, no disrespect here, they just said, well, all third-year medical students are
just
depressed.
Put a pause on that a little bit.
Everybody gets depressed.
At least you had the presence of mind to even seek psychiatric care.
I had no choice, Pamela. I wasn't functioning.
Yeah, but you did. See, if I defer to Raymond, I don't want to correct you because we're going to come
I
back.
understand.
Most people won't even go that far, and that's where the stigma lies, is that people are actually traumatized, struggling, and don't seek help. Raymond, would you agree? Is that a point where you can chime in right there?
Yes.
Yes.
I guess for me, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. I guess for me, I've always been sort of inexplicably prone to just very dramatic mood swings of feeling very low. But I know because I was bullied a lot growing up, so I've always had low self-esteem.
Hey, if this is your first time visiting Team TV channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button here below and ring the notification bell so you will be notified when we post new content.
One particularly low moment in my life that I thought I was over, but I'm not, was when I was 16. I was sexually abused at 16.
Right.
And it's never, that's something that, the person was caught and arrested and everything, but that's something, and I thought I was over it.
Right.
I went through the rest of high school just not thinking about it, and I thought I was over it, and it wasn't until maybe I graduated from acting school.
Yes.
Because when you graduate from acting school, you have a lot of free time, because acting is one of those things where it's the one job where for a majority of the time you don't have a job. So you have a lot of, and I live by myself. I stay in a studio apartment by myself, so I had a lot of time, and then I was getting all these thoughts again, and I realized I'm not in a good place.
So sometimes we see people moving about, and we think they're okay, and they're just not okay, like he said. When did you seek help?
I mean, I've been going to therapy since maybe the late 2017. That's when I've been going to therapy.
And how old were you?
How old were you when you started seeking help?
I would have been about 21.
Okay, so that's the point that I'm trying to make. What made you not seek help before then?
I didn't think I needed it. I at the time did not think I needed it.
So Dr. Mai-Phuong, let me ask you. Most immigrants come from very traumatizing situations. Is it that we just keep going? Some of us...
we don't have a choice.
We just keep... Do we even identify that there's something wrong with us?
I was programmed at 6 years old when I stepped foot on that plane to get out of Vietnam was just to keep moving, right? You just keep going.
So can you imagine how many people out there are struggling with this? I mean...
Millions.
Yes, they're struggling with this and they never seek help. So how have you been able to thrive with this condition, Dr. Mai?
You want to hear?
Because
I haven't been thriving, sweetheart.
Yes.
I look great today, but it's been 25 years. I've had high points, low points, everything in between. And you get through it and you think you're okay.
You think you're okay.
But you're not. And so what I learned, because I've been on this road for a quarter century, is you're in recovery. And like every other chronic condition, illness, disease, challenge, you have to accept that anything can happen. And on a dime, I could be at the top of my career. I mean, I rose to very high levels of medical leadership, struggling, and I'm a guerrilla warfare girl, right? Like, nobody opens the door for me. I have to find a back door. So 5 years ago, I was great. Last year, I had the worst crisis of my life, and I won't get into it because it's too cumbersome, but you get up and down. And so what has saved me is my faith in Buddhism. And last year, I had to turn to Christianity to understand in an interfaith way. So I would categorize myself as a Christian Buddhist, and that would freak out some people who can't understand that stuff. But
a spiritual journey.
Yes. So I've been a practicing meditator, and I've gone all the way to, a place called Plum Village in France to follow my Buddhist master, Thich Nhat Hanh, a world-renowned Nobel nominee by MLK. He's an amazing person who's has several monasteries around the world. But at the turn of the century in 1999, when I graduated my residency, I was just so despondent. I did not see how I was going to face the new century. How could I have worked this hard, graduated medical school at some of the top schools, speak 3 languages, and feel completely hopeless about the future? And so I went to Plum Village to really deepen my meditation practice. And I'm only sharing this, but I didn't get it. And I really didn't get it until last year when I had to dig deep and practice. And I can say I'm not a born-again Christian, but I pray every morning for half an hour and every evening because I have to set myself for success for the day. And one of the key tenets of Buddhism is life is impermanent. Everything changes, and we all know that. But how do you wire yourself to manage and handle anything and everything that life throws your way? Because you could be in love one day, think you found your partner for life, and 12 years later, it's the hardest challenge, and he's not the best friend you thought he was, So everything changes.
Everything changes.
And I deal in hospice now, so people at the end of their life. So I really need to tap into those faith practices to administer the healthcare, help people usher into their deaths, and help their families deal with it. So that's
help you cope with it.
Yeah.
Raymond, what has been your way of coping with it? Because obviously you're sitting here, but I know times when you've told me, Pamela, I'm not in a good space. And I've had conversation. I said, life is precious. And they're like, yes. And then the next moment, no, I'm not in a good space. However, you're here today. You have produced content, screened at the Cannes Film Festival. I mean, you do these amazing things. If someone saw you and you told them I was battling, like, please, you're okay. How are you able to cope? Because we want people that are struggling to try to figure out, maybe learn something from you.
Well, because I can say this, like the last year and a half, creatively, from a career point, has been fantastic. Done a lot of indie films, and all of them have done great. But on a personal level, it's probably been the lowest point of my life.
So when you're doing really well professionally, but
behind closed doors, everyone assumes. And I once saw this. I shared something on Instagram the other day. Somebody had shared something about their brother who committed suicide, who apparently was a graduate from Harvard, was earning 6 figures, and he still committed suicide.
Yeah, and people wonder.
So it has nothing to do. It's nothing to do with. And I always used to think that I was supposed to be of the mindset of if I just keep working, if I just keep succeeding, I'll eventually feel great.
Yes.
And that's not the case. And especially in my field, how many examples are there from?
Do you think the nature of your field makes you more vulnerable?
Very, very.
Yeah.
From an acting perspective, you have to learn to be vulnerable, and then and it's just an industry. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but in this business, it can be very toxic.
Maybe you should get out.
No,
but you love it, right?
Yeah, I love it too much.
You love it.
Love it too much. But and I'm still trying. One thing that has helped me is just talking to people.
Okay.
Talking, even if it's not necessarily professional help, talking to a friend.
Yes.
Talking to whatever your belief is, a pastor, an imam.
I think speaking, when you talk, you liberate yourself.
Exactly. Talking when you feel safe, talking to someone. Because I've some very close friends and people in my life. And my family. They all know who they are, and without them. And one thing that's also really helped me is, this is going to sound strange, but having a pet.
Having a pet?
Why is that strange? It absolutely makes sense. Studies have shown that people with pets live longer and happier lives if they are to be measured in a happy scale.
About a year ago, actually, I got 2 cats.
They don't talk back. They just give unconditional love, right?
Yeah, they can be really sassy, but and I remember, and there was this one particular moment I'll never forget. There was I won't name drop, but there was a documentary that came out a few months ago on HBO concerning some certain somebody.
Yes.
And that, regardless of the credibility of it, that set me back.
Okay.
That caused me to have a bit of a breakdown. And my cat sat with me throughout the entire night.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
Listen, we're going to come back and talk more in depth with you on our Impact Talks segment, one-on-one, so we can talk about, the different cultural, triggers and things that make people maybe more vulnerable or not. Thanks for sharing. We'll come back. I just have to say this. If you're struggling with depression or have suicidal thoughts or know someone who is struggling, please seek help. Talk to someone.
Can I just piggyback what Raymond just
ahead.
said? Studies have shown you don't have to talk to a specialist, although people like Dr. Ibrahim are
If they are
especially
available,
trained.
please.
I mean, there's
Yes.
skill sets involved in mental
Yes.
health. But community is a huge factor in healing and recovery and sustained recovery. And I am a born person to create community, and even though I had pockets of community and I belonged to the mental health champion advocacy group, and I was still so isolated.
That's right.
So community is important.
That was very important information. So if you're struggling, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. And this is Impact with Pamela Anchang on Pacifica Radio, KPFK 90.7 FM. And we've come to the end of our very important show, Impact. And today's show was destigmatizing mental health in immigrant communities. I hope you listened attentively, and that if you know someone who's struggling, please let them know it's not their fault, they are not their illness, they are not their condition. We are here to get help, to give them help, and so please, please, please reach out, seek help, just like our guest told you today. See you next time on Impact. Thanks for watching today's video. For more Team TV videos about immigrant lifestyles, click on the subscribe button here below and ring the notification bell so you will be notified when we upload new content. We upload new content every single week. See you next time on Team TV.